Welcome to the Platform video tutorial. Today we are going to talk about how to configure a feed using the MPX console. Let's start with a review of feeds in the feed service. A feed is a collection of metadata and media file URLs about media you have published. Feeds are useful any place you need fast, highly available, read-only access to your published content. Feed content is fully configurable so you can set the criteria that will define the playback experience. You can think of a feed as a playlist for your player. The feed service is a web service that's responsible for generating and delivering the media feeds in your account. The service provides rapid responses to changes in your published media. Feeds are available in 3 default formats: Atom, JSON, and Media RSS, and you can create a custom output format through the use of our feed adapters. These are useful for outlets such as iTunes or Boxy that don't consume standard data formats. Feeds are intended to be translated by an agent into a suitable interface, such as a player. This player can be on your website, or iPad, or tablet, or mobile device. Feeds are optimized to allow many thousands of client devices to access feed data with no degradation of service. Let's take a look at the feed service architecture. The feed service can be viewed as a caching layer on top of the core MPX system. The feed service provides high-volume, read-only access to media metadata stored in the platform's media data service in MPX. End-user applications, typically a player, use the feed URL to request data from the feed service. The feed service checks for that request within the cache and if the content is within the allowed cache lifespan. If so, the feed data is returned from the cache. Otherwise, the feed service retrieves the media information from MPX. The player will then present the feed data or playlist of media to the end users. When the end user selects a media item to play, the player uses a media file URL from the feed to request and play that file from the CDN. Now that we've finished reviewing our feed service, let's take a look at the easy-to-use interface that MPX provides to create and manage feeds. We'll navigate to the Feeds view and select All Feeds to see the list of feeds defined in this account. From here I can manage or view an existing feed, add a new feed, or copy an existing feed settings. The copy is useful if you have a base feed in your account that has all of your available fields and delivery settings configured, and all you need to do is change the content query to the feed. Feeds are identified by a feed URL, which you will find under the basic settings. This is similar to a media file public URL, only you will see they are delivered from feedtheplatform.com with the account registry ID and then public ID. You can even pick your own ID of up to 32 characters for this value. This feed URL identifies this feed and the content associated with it. For a new feed, the URL is generated when clicking Save. Let's create a new feed that will be used to power a player on our website with multi-bitrate flash content. We'll click the preview blade to see the media as it is added to the feed. This panel will change with each criteria you add to the feed, previewing the content as you build or change it. Creating a feed consists of several steps. The first is selecting media items for inclusion. MPX provides an easy tool for hand-picking media items you want to add to your feed. Click the Add button to navigate to your media view and select the media you'd like to add. Keep in mind the feed will only pick up published media, approved media, and media that is available, not expired or in the future. If you select a media that doesn't have all 3 criteria, you'll see an error icon displayed. The media we selected is added with a pin to the beginning of the feed. Pinned items are always at the top of the feed. We can get started on creating filters in the lineup panel. This panel contains the filter or query information that is used to dynamically update the feed content as media is published or removed from the account. The first thing we want to do is select Include Additional Media After Pinned Items to enable the panel. A couple of filter options available are to match on categories to limit the feed to specific categories of media, or to match on workflow labels. Workflow labels are a way for your organization to identify the state of a media as defined by your internal workflow processes. End users don't have access to a media's workflow labels. Additional custom filters can be used to type one or more media data service queries to select media based on other properties. Let's limit this feed to a few specific categories of content. You can control the sorting of a feed by selecting a field that will be used to sort the contents of the feed. The default here is air date in descending order, which will keep your newest media items first. Feed length lets you set a hard media item limit for the feed. Continuing with defining and filtering the content, the Public URLs panel contains the query information that is used to select media files for the feed. While the lineup panel allowed us to select the media item, now we are looking inside the media and selecting specific media files. This is where you can pull in specific files created for the iPad or iPhone or Flash Dynamic Stream. It all depends on what content you want in the feed. You have options to match on asset types, encoding profiles, content types, formats, delivery method, or if the file is the default content. It's important to understand that any media identified in the previous lineup panel that does not have a media file that matches the criteria we set here will not be included in the feed. With my account and publishing profiles, I identify all my Flash content with an asset type of Flash video. I'm going to further filter my feed to not only specific categories of content, but to only the Flash video files within those media, knowing that I want to power my website with Flash video. Thumbnails is where you can filter which thumbnail images attached to the media items will be included in the feed data. If you don't want every single thumbnail on the media item to be included in the feed content, create a thumbnail filter to limit the thumbnail files that will be included. Only those thumbnails that match the criteria in the filter will be included in the feed. Now we want to select data fields to include. Once the media item has been selected, the next step is to define the data fields that are included in the feed content. We can do this in the Available Fields panel. This panel contains the settings that determine which metadata fields and categories are included in the feed content. By default, a feed will include those fields defined by the media RSS or Atom specification. This is represented by the default fields in the media fields. With the exception of default thumbnail URL, this field is a requirement by our player dev kit. You can select individual custom fields by namespace, prefix, and field name, or just a colon in field name. To select all custom fields defined for the media object, just use a colon. Instead of selecting all my custom fields, I'm going to select those metadata fields that I will need exposed in the player. Limiting the data fields in your feed is a good way to keep your feed clean and lean with just the information needed for the front end. The player dev kit is the only consumer of the category feeds, so generally there's no need to make changes to these fields unless you have a consumer other than the player dev kit. Category feeds normally contain all the categories that exist for the account. You can use this field to limit the categories that appear in the category feed data. This also provides you a way to query for media items on internal-only categories but prevent them from appearing in the player. I'm going to limit my categories to the categories defining this feed. Now on to configuring the delivery of your content. We can do this in the Advanced Settings panel. Here you can place a restriction on feed access or a default ad policy from the content policies defined in your account. This gives you the ability to limit who can view the feed at the feed URL and control how ads are presented with the content. You can also specify the default format of the feed content. In the response type for public URLs, you can choose the type of media file URL that appears in the feed. The default for our player dev kit is the standard SMILE meta file, or multi-bitrate SMILE if your feed contains variable bitrate media. Redirect is used for delivering content to outlets that don't consume the platform's SMILE meta file. This response type will redirect the consumer to the media file on a CDN. Public URL parameters are URL query string parameters that will be appended to every media file URL in the feed. An example of when this might be true is the MBR equals true when doing a player-based multi-bitrate stream. Now that we've walked through each of the panels, let's look at some of the other options we have available with the feeds interface. We know that adding media to the feed pins them to the top of the feed. This pinning feature is used for sequencing your media at the beginning of a feed. You can drag and drop media to the order you want. The rest of the media is dynamically inserted based on the filters and queries we just added. You can also remove the pinned items and have a dynamic-only feed. To do this, select the pinned items and click the Remove button at the bottom of the view. Now my demo feed is strictly a dynamic feed based on categories and asset types. Now that I have my feed settings in place, I'll click Save to generate my feed URL. This is the URL that will be used to deliver this feed content to the player on my website. Before we do that, let's create one more feed to demonstrate how pinning can be used to create an editorial type of feed, or a playlist. I'll start a new feed and name it Editor Picks. Next, I'll select media I want to add to the feed by clicking the Add button. Once they are penned, I have the ability to move and sequence them in any way I want. The feed is where I will make any adjustment to the media in this playlist, adding, removing, or reordering. Now we can take a look at how easily the feed service in MPX works with our player dev kit to power a player. We created two different feeds of content. I'll copy the feed URL from our first one, the demo feed, and open a host page in our player dev kit. The sample player pages in our PDK integrate easily with our feed service. The feed URL is specified at the top of the HTML page. This is where I'll paste the feed URL from MPX. When we open the player page, we can see the categories we specified in the category list. Our preview image is loaded in the video region, and metadata from the feed is displayed in the info area. Our thumbnail images, along with the videos, are displayed in a playlist fashion for the end user. By selecting on a media to play, I'm selecting the media file public URL from the feed. Creating a feed gives me the power to define the playback experience. The MPX console feeds interface makes it easy to select media items to add, select the data fields to include, and configure the delivery of the content. This concludes the video on managing and configuring feeds through the MPX console. Thank you for watching.